Cougars say they had no doubt they could perform well against Wyoming and plan to do nothing but improve this season. Pullman, 2 things were learned about Will Rogers 3 on Saturday in Washington State's season-opening win against Wyoming at War Memorial Stadium. The sophomore defensive lineman, for one, is a quote machine whose brutal honesty in media environments might be just as refreshing as his tenacity on WSU's defensive front. Asked if he thought the Cougars made a statement win by trouncing the Wyoming Cowboys on their home turf in a game bettors thought would be decided by 2.5 points, Rogers 3 responded, "Yeah. Yeah, and we have a lot more statement wins to make." Yes, to answer your question. He left reporters with a few more zingers by the time his 3-minute post-game interview was over. Read on. And the second thing to know about Rogers 3? He's one of maybe a dozen defensive players who would have been hardly identifiable to the average WSU fan last year, but could become a cornerstone of Tracy Claeys' group by the season's end. Due to graduation and one early defection to the NFL, the Cougars are forfeiting plenty of experience at a number of spots on defense this season, and some considerable talent, too, but Saturday's game indicated they may not feel the effects of those losses quite as much as most anticipated. Also, that former defensive coordinator Alex Grinch left WSU with a few parting gifts. 4 players on defense made their first career starts on Saturday. 2 of those, free safety Skylar Thomas and rush linebacker Dominic Silvels, were at the top of the Cougars' tackle leaderboard, with 9 and 6 respectively. Another one, nose tackle Taylor Comfort, recorded 3 tackles and was credited with a half sack. Your man on the street probably wouldn't have been able to provide much of a profile on any of those players prior to Saturday's game, or their backups, such as Rogers 3, a defensive end who had 2 tackles and a sack, rush linebacker Willie Taylor 3, who had 1 tackle, 1 sack and 1 forced fumble, or defensive tackle Jesus Echeverria, who notched 2 tackles including a tackle for loss. It was suggested to Rogers 3 that there were question marks at the rush linebacker spot, where Silvels, who moved to the position midway through camp, and Taylor 3, who's coming off his redshirt season, have the challenging task of replacing Frankie Louvu and Dylan Haunser. If preseason camp solicited questions, the opener provided answers. "The question marks were only by you guys," Rogers 3 said. "We always had faith in those guys. I always knew Willie was going to be a guy. I always knew Dom was going to be a guy," added Nickel Hunter Dale. "I have confidence from watching them in practice. You never know how somebody's going to play in the game until they're actually in the game. A lot of times when they had sacks, I was in coverage and I didn't even know who had the sacks. But they're guys that always make plays and I wouldn't expect less from them. To replace a wave of defensive starters is one thing. To do it while simultaneously introducing a new DC, a new outside linebackers coach, a new safeties coach and a new cornerbacks coach is another challenge completely. Communication between the coordinator and his assistants, between coordinator and players, and between assistants and players is probably an underrated component of the game day routine. WSU's newly assembled defensive staff was doing it for the first time Saturday, but Dale didn't seem to think there were any hiccups. "It was really good that we were playing away, too. So how he wanted us to play, we got to hear him from the sideline, then we would talk on the field, so we kind of get the groove of how he wants us to play," he said. "And the best thing about Coach Claeys, safeties, Coach Kendrick, Shavers, they always tell us that we're the ones playing, so if y'all want to change something, y'all come and tell us and then we'll talk as coaches and let y'all change it. And that's something that we did today, too, that we felt more comfortable playing a certain play and they let us play to our comfortability.